One of the things I really enjoy about homeschooling my own kids is just the intensified vested interest you have in their education. Of course, you can have that if your kids are in private school or public school or anything like that, but I think it really gets emphasized to you when you are homeschooling your kids. Anyhow, one of the really useful tools for homeschooling and raising kids in general is games, which often simulate a scenario in real life. And we really enjoy playing games. I'm going to show you some of our favorites, starting with the one we played this morning for, the last 3 hours? We've gone through a couple of LaCroix and cappuccinos and Petercinos, and it's just been a really nice morning. So this game was published in the 60s. I actually played it when I was a kid. My mom got it at a garage sale. I bought it on eBay for like $30, but it's very well made. I looked it up. It was actually published, I think like the government contracted Department of Education or something like that to produce it. And it's very good. It's very realistic. It teaches lots of interesting principles about finance and the stock market. It pays dividends. You can go to stockholder meetings and have your money multiplied, like when they split the stock. And the banker over here deals with all the cash. And then I was the broker, so I dealt with all the shares. And we played this last week. Peter wiped the floor with me. I think you had like 300,000 at the end?
Yep.
And today I wiped the floor with him. We actually ran out of cash. I had about $500,000. But it's really great for mental math. It's really great for understanding how stock market prices fluctuate, dividends work, shareholders meetings work when they split the stock. We ended up looking up some real life examples about how companies are split up, and when Apple did their IPO, private, public companies. There's just so much to latch onto here as your children have interest and as you have knowledge to share with them. And it's funny, these are all real companies, of course, but many of them are not so well known anymore. And then what was really funny, last time Peter wiped the floor with me because he had a lot of Western publishing. And then we noticed this. Look who actually published this game. That's funny. Family's favorite game is undoubtedly Settlers of Catan, which you've probably heard of. We like the Seafarers expansion the most. Traders and Barbarians is okay. And Cities and Knights we've played and enjoy, but I still think Seafarers is the best. What I really like about Settlers is that it's a resource management game that has a lot of realism baked into it. So basically, like if you roll a 7, you lose half your cards, which kind of keeps you from being this hoarder and sort of forces you to be exchanging resources and sort of keep the economy going, so to speak. The other thing that I really like is it teaches the introductory principles of statistics. So on all of these numbers, you'll see these dots at the bottom, and the dots indicate the probability that this will be rolled. And so that begins to teach children that if you have 2 die, then there are many ways to make, the combination of 6, a 1 and a 5 and a 2 and a 4 and a 3 and a 3, and then a 4 and a 2 and a 5 and a 1, whereas there's only one combination to make a 12, which is, 6 and 6. And so you get this introduction to this real thing, statistics and probability. And what I find interesting about that is I worked with I had a friend at Volkswagen who wasn't an engineer. He hadn't studied it, but he had parents who taught him the introductory principles for a lot of things. And so we would start talking about statistics or physics or something like that, and he wouldn't necessarily know the proper words or theories, but he would say things like, well, it's kind of like when you played board games and you threw 2 die and it was always one number more than the other. And it was like he had these elementary, simplified examples of complicated things. And it seemed to me that really helped him grasp more complicated things because he had this elementary understanding from something as simple as rolling die and playing a game with your family. Another favorite of ours that we'll probably actually take on the road with us is Carcassonne. This game is great if you're ever playing with foreigners who don't all speak the same language fluently, because there's basically no words. It's just pictures. And the rules are relatively simple. We have several expansions. We have the Gardens and Ponds, I think is what it's called. And then this one, the Abbey and Mayor, they're really good. We actually modify our game sometimes, like we cut the board in half and taped it so that it can all fit in this small box. And I super glued all of these edges so that they hold up. But one of the things I would encourage is to modify the way games are played to increase chance for younger kids or increase strategy for older kids. So in this game, typically all of these are face down, And when it's your turn, you basically just pick one up and you have to choose where to play it. But we didn't like that level of chance, so my wife and I decided that everyone can always hold two. So when it's your turn, you play one of the two, and then at the end of your turn, you replenish. And by having two in your hand, you then have some choice. You're not just forced to play the one you picked up. You get to choose between which one would be more strategic. And yeah, we modify games like that a lot regarding, if you roll doubles, you go again, something like that. Or in cribbage, we've changed the rules a little bit. And you can do that to tailor the game for your family if you have older kids who are interested in more strategy and less war-like chance games. Or if you have younger children, then you can increase the chance, which gives everyone a greater chance at winning. Life is an example of a game that I really don't like, at least from teaching children anything. And there's a few reasons for that. I'll just give an example. The first is when you choose to go to college in the beginning and you take out a bank loan, you have to pay interest on it, which is realistic. But what I don't like is you pay the same amount of interest whether you pay these loans off right away at the beginning of the game or at the very end. And so you completely fabricate the idea of interest and loans, which I don't like. The other thing that I thought I would like is that when you go to buy a house, there's an investment aspect to it. So if you buy a mobile home, you basically get to sell it for what you bought it for. But if you buy one of these, then you get to sell it for and make a small profit. I thought, okay, that's cool. But then they totally ruined it because these are your starter homes. And then later you get to upgrade to standard homes. But then there's absolutely no increase in the investment. So you buy it for $500 and then you sell it for $500 later. And there's no advantage to keeping that cash in your pocket, and there's no advantage to spending it. So it's like they started with a useful principle and then they didn't carry it through. There's a couple other small details. I'm not trying to pick the game of life apart, but there's a few things that just are not representative of real life at all. And then it teaches children essentially false principles. Ticket to Ride was one of the very first games of this style that my wife and I ever got. We got this from, I think her cousin, right when we got married. Ticket to Ride is a great introductory game. Yeah, there we go. Oh, from her sister. Ticket to Ride is a great introductory game. The only thing I dislike about Ticket to Ride is once you've played it many times, the layout of the board becomes boring because basically the layout of the board is fixed. Whereas a game like Kingdom Builder, which I don't own but is excellent, or a game like Settlers, you get to always rearrange the board. And so it adds variety. And when you've been playing a game like this for 15 years, that variety is really nice. Catchphrase is an awesome game with kids. As soon as they're at the reading age, I would say go for it. My 7-year-old, 9-year-old, 11-year-old all love it. And it's absolutely hilarious as parents to hear how kids describe things. Some use a very detailed, technical, analytical approach. Other kids use like examples. And then the funniest thing is that the kids they'll say to each other like, remember 3 weeks ago when we were at the barn and we saw that thing in the corner? What was it? And then they'll say like, oh yeah, lantern. It's like, yeah, lantern. And so it's absolutely hilarious to see how kids will try and get you to say certain words. My wife and my favorite two-player game is The Struggle for Catan. This one we bought while living in Germany. It is an excellent two-player card game. It gives a lot of depth and a lot of variation. It's very engaging. If you are looking for a two-player game, then I would say this is the one if you like strategy games. It's also a resource management type of game, but it only uses cards, and some die. No big board, so it's quite compact. We're probably going to take that on the road with us as well. We've taken this one backpacking, and we've owned it since Christmas of 2012, and we still enjoy playing it. Aside from cribbage, which my wife and I both enjoy, Duel might be the second or third best two-player game that we have come across. It's not as good as The Struggle for Catan in our personal opinion, and there's a little bit more involvement in terms of board and setup, so it's not quite as travel friendly, but it's really good if you like strategy games, and also has a lot of variation in it, which allows you to play it many times without getting too bored. So in the top 3 for games as a family is Dominion. We ditched the boxes because we're taking this on the road with us. And this is basically a victory point style game where you collect these green cards to get points, and you have to buy cards with money, and there's all these action cards. What makes Dominion a real hit, in my opinion, is that certain elements of the game stay the same. You're always collecting money, you're always gathering points, but We have one expansion. I think it's called the Intrigue expansion. But even without the expansion, there are like 20 different action cards to choose from, and you only play with like 8 to 12 per game. So depending on which action cards are put out in the game, the whole strategy of the gameplay can change. So there can be action cards that are, you do a lot of attacking to your opponents, and therefore you also have to do defending. Then there are other ones that have to do with deck multiplication, and just the way that kids have to learn to stack the moves, where you get extra cards, extra actions, extra purchases. It can be really good, I think, for their brains in decision making and sort of like the steps of logic and sequence of play, as well as considering and creating all these different combinations for what you play first and win. So Dominion is fantastic. It's probably, in my opinion, the best game that only uses cards. No board, no pieces, no dice, just cards, and it is fantastic. So, Uno is also a favorite of our families, but not for the reasons you might expect. I grew up playing what my mom called Olympic-style Uno. Apparently, it was invented by my Uncle Paul. I'm not totally sure on that, but it's a very fast-paced version of the game. And I'll just lay out the rules for you. But more important than the rules is just to use your own imagination to learn how to speed things up if they become boring. One thing you want to do is you want to find games that you as the adult can enjoy, because your kids will pick up on the fact that you're bored and doing it really just for them, like Candyland. And they will pick up on the fact that you're interested and energetic if the game is intriguing. And so change the rules around until it's at a pace and at an intensity that you can enjoy, and that also then challenges your child. So with Olympic-style Uno, the way that we played it was when it comes time to play, let's say, a blue card, you can play as many fives as you have. So you can stack this five of blue five, then a red five, then a green five, then a yellow five, all on your turn. And the faster you are, the more that you can get rid of extra cards. The other thing you can do is you can stack draw twos. And if someone plays a draw two and you're supposed to draw 2 cards, you can add to that and then push draw 4 to the person, to your left or to your right. The other thing that we played was you can stack skips and draw 4. So if someone plays a draw 4, you can play a draw 4 as well. And you can stack skips. So if you're playing with like 5 people and you go skip, 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 it skips, over, let's say you're player 1, it skips over 2 to 3, over 3 to 5, over 5 to 2. And then we play that if you don't know it's your turn and you're delayed more than 3 seconds, you get a 3-card penalty. We also play that you can stack reverse cards. So you can play like reverse, 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 and then you always cover the reverse card with a normal card. And so the turns can really get interesting where you just lay down 6 or 7 or 8 cards. And because we have this 3-second rule before you get the penalty, it keeps the pace very fast, very high. We played it with some friends of ours in their 50s the other day, and they basically wanted to play every night that they were here. It's just so much fun, even as adults. And so again, if you have these games that your kids enjoy, but they're just boring, find a way to spice them up. Just a couple honorable mentions. We picked up Outburst the other day from a used bookstore for $5. Is pretty fun, and we may not keep it forever and ever, but it's fun to play a few times. Scattergories is another great choice when it comes to word games. We have some of the Ticket to Ride variants that are okay, not amazing. Trekking the National Parks is fun if you like national parks, but the gameplay is fairly boring. Monopoly, of course, is a staple in many homes, although also compared to the new generation of games, I find the board set up to be a little bit boring. We picked up this Clue game from this used bookstore for like $5, and this one uses a DVD, which added a lot of dynamics. Azul is a fun game to play with kids if you've never played that one, along with Corridor and the good old-fashioned Password. Believe it or not, although it's a little simpler than Catchphrase, we all really enjoy it. Honorable mention is Die Siedler von Catan auf Deutsch. This was a gift, and it was really special because even the town that we are living in, Braunschweig, has its own place on the board. The board is beautiful, and the pieces are really cool. But I would warn against this type of game simply because when you're playing the normal Settlers of Catan and you get to rearrange the board every time you play, static boards like this, which are always the same, become boring. It doesn't matter how beautiful the pieces are or how good the illustrations are, it begins to bore kids. And so I would look for games like Settlers of Catan that the the standard version, where these hexes are interchangeable, and that will give you many more years of enjoyable play because of all the variation. All right, well, I hope that was helpful to someone. Playing games with kids is an awesome activity. It's a great way to learn. My kids just got home, in fact, so I'm saying good morning for the very first time. And would you like to play a game? Great ending.